My name is Matt Bolian, and for better or worse, I confess, I'm a millennial. And I think my story is indicative of a larger picture that is happening in Mississippi. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. I am from Brandon, Mississippi, graduated in 2007. From graduation, I went to the United States Military Academy. I graduated from West Point in 2011. From there, I went to get my master's degree at the London School of Economics in Urban Economics and Regional Economics. And after that, I spent the last 6.5 years in the United States Army as a military intelligence officer. And I had one big decision when I was getting out of the Army that I had to make, and it was whether or not I was going to grow a beard. So I made that decision, but actually, it was where was my family going to live? And I'm telling you right now, I want to be completely frank with you, when I looked at Jackson, Mississippi, it was the bottom, like the last place. And mine is not a minority story, this is a majority story. So let's get started. 2 stats. Number 1, Mississippi has the 41st slowest growing population. We support a 0.7%. And if you look at the other 9 that are below us, they're like 0.5, 0.4, almost exactly the same. We're essentially just not growing. So what does that mean? Well, we have the 19th highest fertility rate, which means we're putting a lot of people in Mississippi how are we putting people in, but our population's not growing? If you guessed millennials, you're right, this whole thing's about millennials. So we go to the next statistic. That is, we sport the number 1 highest decrease percentage of millennials in the entire nation, 3.9%. That's more than every other southern state beside us. That's more than double Tennessee. There's only 2 other states that even have a 2% decrease. One of them is Michigan, and they have the city of Detroit in it. So this is what we call brain drain. But you go one step deeper. You look at the population that we're losing. It's not just millennials. It's the most educated millennial population that is leaving. We call it brain drain, but I don't think that's that's not even a good terminology. This is brain bleed. We are hemorrhaging talent from our state. And not to kick a dead horse, but I will one more time. I just want to bring this and drive this point home, is that right now we have the lowest mobility rate in modern U.S. history. What does that mean? That means that someone is less likely to move somewhere else now than ever before in modern U.S. history since World War II. So look at ourselves, Mississippi. If someone moves away right now, they're less likely to move back than ever before since World War II. That means for us at home, if you have a child that left, they're less likely to come back. This is a big darn deal, so let's treat it like one. So next is, how big of a deal is this? Who even cares about millennials in the first place, right? We're just entitled people, right? We're also the largest demographic, and there's 2 things that come from this, and this slide is number 1. We are the future workforce. We're the largest demographic that have ever existed in the United States, larger than the baby boomers and almost double the population of Xers. So that means by 2020, we are 50% of the workforce, and by 2030, we are over 70% of the workforce. If people are leaving, it's just harder to employ individuals. Less businesses are here. Number 2 is we're the largest consumer market. If we don't have people here, economic supply and demand, we simply just don't have a large enough economic engine to keep things rolling. And right now, millennials are already executing the supply and demand. They are leaving Mississippi because we don't have what they demand. So before we get how we solve this problem, let's go first into cause. And there's a bunch of variables, but I'll focus on 2. Number 1 is the city. Millennials as a demographic are having later in life transitions. What that means is they're finishing college later, they're then getting married later. It's 29 and 31 female male. And they're having children they're having children later if they even have children at all. And then they're having less children. So if you go to a life stage and you look at where people live, depending on what life stage they're in, they stay in the point where they want to live in cities longer. When you graduate college, you're more likely to go to a city and move somewhere. But what we found, and this is the next thing, is as a population cohort, millennials just desire urban locations more. So the people that are now 35, 36, have children, are staying in the city at a greater proportion than any other demographic before them. They're demanding the place they're living with their children. They're saying, I want this place to look, and I want this place to change to where I'm living. Meaning, they're not moving from the cities. They're not moving to the suburb in the same rate the other generations are. Number 2, expectations. Did you know this? I didn't know this before this presentation. The United States works more hours than any other developed country in the world. I think that's a good thing. Like, we're hardworking. Like, everybody, good job. Look at yourself, great. But number 2, this is not so good. We work more hours than every other developing country, except for 2. That means we work more than places with sweatshops. Think about that. So, as a millennial, I grew up watching this. My parents in a suburban location work a lot of hours. So what does this mean for me, and what did my generation feel? We saw people wake up, get to their garage, drive to work, be at work, drive back to work, into the garage, go home, rinse, repeat. And we don't want that. So what does this mean? So LinkedIn does a study. What this slide's showing is 94% of millennials will take a job with non-traditional benefits over one that doesn't even offer it. 94%. Non-traditional benefits are things like bringing your dog to work, having unlimited vacation, having longer than a 6-week maternity leave, things that matter to people so they can have lives and they can work in the same place. We do not equate hours worked with productivity. That's what this whole entitled thing is, where we say we can do work if we have a purpose-driven place we're at that supports me and my passions. And we demand that, and that's a lot of the reason we move. So you look, great places to work, you list like Google, Facebook, Airbnb. What do they do? You can look on the internet and find out. And a lot of it's non-traditional benefits. Giving them 10% of their time back to work on something they want, innovation at Google. Okay, so we understand this is a big darn problem, and we have some causes. What about Mississippi? I have a question. Just think about it. You can close your eyes or think about it. What does Mississippi not have? A city, and a lot of companies that offer non-traditional benefits. It's not rocket science why people don't want to live here. In fact, it makes sense. So what can we do about it? Let's go. We can talk about problems all day. Number 1, city as an engine. The city is the place where economic development happens, it's where innovation happens. It's the theory of agglomeration. So, I have a question. Suburbs exist because of what? The city. They have the word urban. You have to spell urban to do suburban. So I think we have an identity crisis in Mississippi, in Jackson. I'm from Brandon, right? I've never in my life said I'm from Jackson. Have you ever met somebody from Park, Illinois? If you have, it's probably a rare case, because I bet they say they're from Chicago, because they understand that their fate as a suburban location is dependent upon the success economically of their city. It is intimate, and it is linked together. So we as Jackson, Pearl, Brandon, Madison, et cetera, we are Jackson, and we do accept our identity as such. Because if Jackson doesn't exist, you don't exist in reality. Number 2, people-oriented economic development. So this is essentially this: focus on bringing people, businesses come later. John did the whole presentation about it, but essentially people's mobility has decreased, as we've already talked about. Businesses' mobility has increased. So now businesses go to where people already are. The city and where they live is a consumer good we must invest in to bring people there. Harvard professor Glacier said this, bring the people and get out of their way. Focus on people. Non-traditional benefits, and this is the landscape we exist on. I can go to Glassdoor, I can look up benefits from every other company, every company in the nation right now. We do not exist in local or regional competition with each other. We exist in a national competition with companies across the nation. So when we look at benefits, we need to be able to look at the top person in our industry and say, why are you different? And being able to differentiate yourself with a non-traditional benefit that's attached to your mission. For instance, Airbnb gives people travel expenses. Tech companies a lot of times give you tech money so you can go buy nice computers. Okay, I want to end with this. If these things don't change in a real way, what does Jackson become? I think our future's written. We're nothing more than a federally funded suburb of other bigger cities like Memphis, New Orleans, and Atlanta. And we need to start investing in what's going to bring people here and consider the city a consumer good for tomorrow. Thank you.